Welcome to a Monday edition of the Baseball Insiders. I'm Adam Weinrib alongside Fansided's MLB Insider Robert Murray. And trade season is upon us, kind of, Robert. We had a fairly seismic move on Friday that seemed to be foretold a long time ago and finally went down. But perhaps more importantly, your Philadelphia Eagles beat my New York Giants in the divisional round, the NFC playoffs on Saturday. And so I am dressed like you. Welcome to the show.
Wow, what a guy. Go Birds, baby. It's a good look on you. It's something we should have more often on the show or even just in general.
It's one of the NFL's fiercest logos. It does look good. I will never look you in the eyes and tell you like, hey, it doesn't look good. No, it looks great. The outfit was purchased by my mother-in-law this Christmas. It's a great gift. Maybe not a gift I'm going to use that often because I do love the team that is a direct rival of this team. But that said, I'll wear it when I lose a bet. I'll wear it when my team loses an important playoff game, which if you believe in the New York Giants' recent history, they love to lose important playoff games. So you might see it more often than you thought you might. Robert, how was your experience watching the game? Where were you for that absolute slaughter?
Yeah, I was watching it in my apartment. I just kept it low key. It's like I usually like to be alone during Eagles games just because like I'm a pretty mild-mannered guy, but during Eagles games, I just get super animated. And it was a pretty calm watching experience, just being able to watch that a 38-7 beatdown. Like I was respectful. I didn't send you any texts during, before, or even after the game. It's like I don't want to rub it in, just like want to be a respectful guy. So
you were completely respectful. I wouldn't have held it against you if you were obnoxious, though, considering how not close that was. I was at a bar watching with my wife, and when they were down, I think it was when they were down 14-0, and Daniel Jones threw a pick on whatever. That drive was obviously not going to be anything anyway, because who cares? But when it looked like they were about to be down 21-0, I was like, all right, this is great. Oh, this is fantastic. Like throwing out sarcastic things. And she was like, you said you didn't care. And I was like, I mean, I don't care, but I don't want to get absolutely slaughtered. And apparently I found my breaking point, but it's all good. I'm wearing the pullover and we're talking baseball. And we're going to empty your notebook in a little bit because we're running low on targets. We're not too many names still floating out of the market. And I want to get your feelings and thoughts on who might be headed where, what the Boston Red Sox might be doing from here on out after extending Rafael Devers and getting booed at their winter weekend. But before we get into the future, let's talk a little bit about the recent past. Pablo Lopez and Marlins number 5 prospect, another shortstop, Jose Salas, a 19-year-old who's already 13th ranked in Minnesota. So that tells you a little bit about the relative strength of those two farm systems. And a third prospect, well, Pablo Lopez and 2 prospects, go to Minnesota for Luis Arraez. The Twins obviously sold Arraez pretty high, got a bonus top prospect out of it, but it's a batting champ for a starter who I think is still more potential than results. Are we totally sure the Twins got better today?
You know, I thought I liked the Pablo Lopez trade for them. I thought it made a whole lot of sense because they have a lot of players. They have 3 pitchers in particular who are on expiring contracts, and they needed a young pitcher with upside who was controllable, and that's exactly Lopez. And they viewed him as a guy that had the upside to be like that. It's a player they've coveted for years, and they sold high on Luis Arraez, who obviously is the batting champion. Very, 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 very good player, but did not have a true defensive position. And they also, the Minnesota Twins, they had concerns about how his leg would hold up over time. I know that's something that Dan Hayes of The Athletic wrote, and that's something I've heard as well. But we'll see who's right when it comes to Arraez, but he's a really talented player. And the Marlins, they wanted to deal from their pitching surplus to upgrade their lineup. And after they signed Johnny Cueto, they were able to move a player like Lopez. And they got interest in some of their other starting pitchers, but Lopez always seemed like the most likely candidate to go, even since last trade deadline. And ultimately, they pulled the trigger. I thought it was a little bit I thought it was interesting that the Marlins had to include one of their top prospects in the deal, because I thought Lopez for Arraez was relatively fair, just as like an even trade. But ultimately, they had to part with more. I know some people were kind of I don't know, they weren't huge fans of parting with the prospects, but overall, I think it was a good baseball trade. I think it made sense for both teams. I like the deal for both sides. And I know there's been rumors about the Marlins doing more after this, and we can get into that in a little bit. Should I just drop it now?
Yeah, go forth and prosper, King.
All right. Wow, my guy. So there's been reports about the Marlins being close with Yuli Gurriel. There was a report a couple days ago that they were closing in on it. At that moment, nothing was close. And I don't know where it's at today. But at that point, it was not close. There's other teams that are in the mix. The Twins are one of them. I believe there's a couple other teams in the mix as well, but nothing close at this time. But they have a lot of infielders going on they have a lot of infielders in Miami right now. They have a boatload of them. And I remember immediately after they made that trade for Arraez, I had texts and calls from different people in baseball asking, what the heck are they going to do here? Do you trade a guy like Joey Wendell, who has been linked to the Red Sox? Do you trade a guy like John Birdie, who is a player that I know a bunch of teams like? I mean, they moved Jazz Chisholm to center field, so they at least cleared up something there. But if you had Yuli Gurriel, then you have a first base overload with Garrett Cooper. I don't know. It's a really interesting strategy that they got going on there. But I guess give credit to the Marlins because they're actually, spending.
Yeah, they are. And I think we could finally rule out Gleyber Torres to the Marlins. I think.
I'm thinking you might be right. Yeah.
Yeah. I suspect it's, it's that little dust that's floating in the air. I'm like, I think I can finally see through it. Yeah. But it's Gene Segura and Luis Arraez and maybe Yuli Gurriel and Jazz Chisholm, who apparently took himself and moved himself to center field because he saw this getting a little kooky. Certainly a lot of infielders, a lot of mid-tier power bats, and always a lot of pitching. Like you're right, they sold Lopez because they had to sell somebody, but there's still a lot of pitching there. There's still, Cabrera and Rogers, who went from rookie of the year candidate to wild card. And, we've heard about a lot of these other names moving. Eliezer Hernandez did finally move, right? Like he's actually gone. Unless he's on the New York Mets now.
Yeah.
Good get by the Mets. But there's still a pitching glut. There's a little surplus there. And the Marlins farm system is still relatively thin, and they thinned it out more by trading Salas in that Lopez deal. Do you foresee them maybe selling more assets to try to beef up that farm system, or are they going to roll into the year with this overload? I mean, clearly they don't care what we think. Like we were talking about a pitching overload for weeks, then they go out there and sign Johnny Cueto. So it's clearly they're not listening to crickets chirping, being like, ooh, they're right. We got to get rid of some pitchers. But do you foresee maybe a couple more trades there rather than just a Gurriel potential signing?
I've been trying to get a good answer on that. And the honest answer is I don't know. I think they would be open to anything. Like they're not going to hang up on somebody if they call. Like that's what any good team does. But I wonder, because I don't think you'd be able to get much for a guy like John Birdie. I think that'd probably be like one or two like flyer prospects. Like I know one team that likes Birdie's the Brewers. But there's no real clear fit there because they're another team that's pretty loaded with infielders. But maybe Wendell for the Red Sox. I mean, I mentioned that before. Like the Red Sox, they've continued to have trade conversations looking for an infielder. I can provide more insight on that later. But it's no real clear option here. I mean, but they wanted Wendell to start before the trade for Arraez. So I don't know. It's a really weird situation there. It's like it's a good thing to have a lot of talented players, and it's now up to Skip Schumacher to make all those puzzle pieces fit here.
Yeah, I almost forgot their manager is someone who I think is older than me, but not by that much. No, I think he's probably like 8 or 9 years older than me. But it's one of the more jarring MLB managers. Guy we watched growing up. Utility.
Me too. Yeah. And my favorite player watching or growing up was Craig Counsell. Mm-hmm. And my first manager I ever covered on a beat was Craig Counsell. And it's like, hey, dude, I impersonated you in the batter's box. And now here I am talking to you and covering you on a daily basis. And he's like, and Counsell's a great dude. I'm a big Craig Counsell guy.
Nice.
Very nice. Very nice fellow.
I mean, he comes off great in these interviews. Like, I can't imagine him. It would shock me if there was like a secret private persona of Craig Counsell where he's just a complete, piece of garbage.
No, I've got nothing but good things to say about him. He's good people.
Beautiful. Well, perhaps he'll be managing John Birdie in a little bit if he's got a couple Flyer prospects to get rid of. What about the Twins here? Where do you ultimately rank them in the AL Central now that they've gotten this done? I know you think it's kind of a win-win, so would insinuate to me that you're ready to move them up the Central rankings. But it's also funny that you said they were concerned about Arraez's leg when they just finished off a $200 million deal with a guy whose leg was providing concerns to just about everybody else except for the Minnesota Twins and Carlos Correa. But where do you rank them now, and how do you think they finish their offseason? I feel like there are maybe a couple more bats, unless they believe in Trevor Larnach and the kids. I don't know how you see the Twins polishing off this offseason.
Yeah, you can't doubt the kids. I mean,
a lot of teams got some kids, we believe it. Yeah, they're
darn right. But yeah, it's the Twins. I still think of them as a prime contender for that division. I think Cleveland, obviously, last year they earned the respect of every team because they far exceeded expectations there. Although I'm curious to see how their offense does as well. But like in terms of the Twins, I don't think they're done quite yet. I still think they are a prime candidate now to move one of those starting pitchers who are on expiring contract. I still think Sonny Gray makes a whole lot of sense as a trade candidate here. That's something that I think rival teams should and probably already have begun to explore. Like a team like the Los Angeles Angels, I mean, they always needed a starting pitcher. I think he would make sense. That's not like something I'm hearing. I should probably clarify that, but I think that makes a whole lot of sense on paper. But I think that's their first move that they should do. And then the second move that the Twins should make is adding another bat, whether it's a Gurriel, exploring the trade market even further. The only issue right now is that the options on the market are relatively thin. Like this free agent class is pretty thinned out. So they're going to have to get creative, but that's something that Derek Falvey and that front office have really thrived at, is being creative, whether it's contract structures, exploring markets. I wouldn't put anything past them. I don't think they're going to be able to spend too big, but I'll give them a whole lot of credit because they've exceeded my expectations for this offseason, because never in a million years did I think they would end this offseason with Carlos Correa and Pablo Lopez.
Yeah, we gave the Twins their flowers on the Correa show, and we'll keep doing it. It was a brilliant job sticking with that business all the way to the end. When not to talk about Giants Eagles, but Giants are down 21 and they're driving and they're stuck around midfield in the fourth quarter. What do? They punt, and a lot of people said, "Oh, you're not going to win anyway. Who cares?" But it's a cowardly punt, and if the Twins had walked away. The Twins had walked away from the Carlos Correa conversation, that would have been a cowardly punt, because clearly it wasn't done in San Francisco. It wasn't done in New York. They stuck to it longer than anybody thought, and then they go ahead and get themselves Pablo Lopez too.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like their persistence and their continued conversations with Scott Boras was a huge thing in them getting that deal done with Boras and with Correa. And yeah, all the credit in the world to them. I don't know how many other front offices would have done that, but they did, and it ultimately resulted in Correa sticking to Minnesota.
We will move on to the Red Sox in a second and further empty the notebook, but I want to get a couple of these in the chat up. Hockey legend Jaromir Jagr is asking us about the White Sox Benintendi signing and the potential ramifications. Eloy to DH. Eloy, maybe he gets some time in right. We haven't talked a lot of White Sox in a while, so I'm wondering if you've thought any further about the long-term ramifications of the Benintendi deal, and if anybody else moves around as a result of that, or maybe Benintendi becomes a chess piece.
Yeah, I thought at first the Benintendi signing, that was too rich for my blood, and I know that was how some other people in baseball thought of it too. Was the 5 years was ultimately what got Benintendi to the White Sox. But it's a move that I think added some much needed life into that fan base, because there was a lot of people that were down about the organization. Obviously they have all that young talent, but they didn't really supplement it properly. and ultimately they suffered. And it's a player that their new manager is very familiar with in Kansas City. So like there's not much of a learning curve there at all. It's like they know exactly what they're getting. And possibly moving Eloy Jimenez into a prominent DH role is a really good thing for them, because as you know, like he's really struggled staying healthy throughout his career. Like it's whether it's crashing into the outfield or just missing significant time with injuries. It's limited what they've been able to do on the field. And having him healthy for possibly 130 plus games, which is, I mean, it's a better bet with him as a DH. Just because you're not putting him in the field, but having him healthy for that amount of games significantly increases their upside throughout that entire team. So I think it's a good thing. I think Andrew Vaughn finally playing in his natural position is going to be a good thing for them too. I also want to wish Liam Hendriks all the best too. I have continued to send good vibes to him. But I'm curious to see what else the White Sox do this offseason. But I will say, I think Mike Clevenger there, I mean, I'm hopeful that he'll be able to turn that into a nice contract year and then end up making bank in free agency.
And he's a guy who certainly deserves to get a shot at making bank. He's gone through a lot these last couple of years, and he has not dampened the personality. And in terms of not dampening the personality, that goes for Liam Hendriks too. I will echo those well wishes. All of the baseball world is watching you, and we got our eyes on your recovery. There's a great piece in The Athletic about how much he's done for others and the people who he's done charity for coming back to wish him well now that he is fighting. And we certainly second, third, and fourth that. Get well soon, Liam Hendriks. Let's talk about the Bo Sox a little bit, because you and I agreed, loser of the offseason. We put him on that losers list last time we talked, but they're less of a loser now than they used to be. I would say they got the Devers deal done, didn't take him off our loser list, but it moved him up a little bit closer to neutral. They still let Bogarts walk, still lost JD, still let Nathan Eovaldi go, Corey Kluber in the rotation. People have their opinions. I have mine. All of this has turned into the Red Sox fan base, which won a franchise record 108 games in the World Series 4 years ago. That was October 2018. So pre-2019 season, they were still basking in the glow of that season. It has somehow turned them into raging New York Knicks fan monsters in just 4 years. Chaim Bloom's, whatever he's done to dismantle this roster. They were screaming at him at the winter weekend. He was trying to get some words in to justify the Betts deal, saying, you guys know where we were 3 years ago. And they were booing and they were screaming Dave Dombrowski at him. They wouldn't let him talk. And Jared Carrabis got up there and started asking about Bogarts and whether they got lied to about it, how much of a priority he was. Are you that down on the Red Sox? Like, do you think they should be in angry fans screaming territory right now? Because it does feel like they maybe have some more tricks up their sleeve. And they did just sign Adam Duvall, too, who was one of your guys who you were trying to send to the Yankees a couple weeks ago. And whenever somebody says, he'd be a good fit for the Yankees, this guy, and then that guy goes to the Red Sox, I'm automatically like, that feels a little gross. So where do you stand today on screaming Red Sox fans and the Red Sox offseason?
I think Red Sox fans have every right to be pissed off. I know if I was a Red Sox fan, I would not be happy right now. I mean, you lose Mookie Betts and you basically get nothing in return. I mean, Alex Verdugo, but they designated Jeter Downs for assignment. And then you lose Xander Bogaerts for nothing when you promise your fans that re-signing him is your top priority. And I mean, to be fair, the Padres, they offered Bogaerts an absurd contract. Like I don't think there was any other team that's prepared to come close to what they ended up signing him for. But losing those guys, then losing Eovaldi, I don't know what the market is for Michael Wacha quite yet, but let's pretend that he's gone. They've lost some other pieces in there too. But there's the only glimmer. I mean, I shouldn't say the only. That's too excessive here. But yeah, being able to extend Rafael Devers for as long as they did, that at least gives them a piece to build around. That gives them a superstar, and that's a huge step because he doesn't have to look over his shoulder and wonder what exactly his future is going to look like. He knows exactly where he's going to be. But it's supplementing that roster with talent like around him. And Trevor Story's not going to be there. They've continued to look for shortstops. Like, I know they've poked around at a lot of different options. Like, I know there's been reports about Joey Wendell with the Marlins. Like, Adalberto Mondesi is one that they've also checked in on too. But I don't know of anything close there. But the Red Sox, to me, they can't go into the season with the roster as is. Like, they have too many holes, whether it's in the middle infield or in the rotation. So Chaim Bloom's got his work cut out for him. Curious to see what he does. But this has not been a good offseason for the Boston Red Sox one bit.
And I think the solace you can take is that it probably isn't done. Like, we didn't think they were going to get Devers done until all of a sudden there he was for 11 more years. We knew there was an outfield vacancy, but maybe they were going to go into the season with Kike out there and some minor leaguers. And then, there's Adam Duvall. So, Jacob Bradley has a question here on AJ Preller potentially looking at extending these Padres free agents. But I sort of have a feeling that AJ Preller might be someone who the Boston Red Sox give a call to in the next couple of weeks too, to talk Ha-Seong Kim, to talk through these potential, that's a shortstop solution that makes some sense to me. Do you see that as something that Boston might pursue, or is it sort of going to be the Wendell, Mondesi, and we cross our fingers thing?
I wouldn't rule anything out for the Red Sox, and this is just opinion here. This isn't like sourced info or anything. I mean, the Padres, if they want to go on the upper end here, like Ha-Seong Kim certainly makes plenty of sense. If I was a team and if I was an opposing team, I would call the Padres and I would ask what it takes to acquire Jake Cronenworth. I am a huge Jake Cronenworth fan. I don't think the Padres would give him up under. I shouldn't say he's untouchable, but at least I wouldn't. I don't know, but I would not trade Jake Cronenworth if I was a Padres. But if I was another team, I would certainly check in to see what it would take. But I like as far as the Red Sox are concerned, I don't know of any other names that they've checked in on. That's not because they're only checking in on those players, but that's just what I've heard. So we'll see what they have to do. I would imagine Chaim Bloom will uncover every stone here, or whatever that saying is. I can't remember what exactly.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I was trying to think, but I also turnover.
Turnover. That's better than uncover. I mean, that.
You turn over a new leaf, though. Do you turn over a rock? I don't know. I'm actually lost too. And
leave no stone unturned. There we go.
Leave no stone. I was like, maybe that's fitting for the Red Sox offseason, that we both are like, they have to go turn over some more rocks. And the comments are like, that's not the phrase. That's not the phrase. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's turn over some more rocks. But yes, they will leave no stone unturned.
There we go. Yeah, that's ultimately what I think they're going to end up doing, but is leaving no stone unturned. Let's see, we got it this time.
There it is. Seamless edit point. Just Sean cut the middle part out, put it right there.
Bingo. Yeah. Thank you, Sean, in advance. By the way, that's our lovely producer, Sean Daly, who's also a diehard Philadelphia Eagles fan. Go Birds.
This is an Eagles pod.
Oh, it really is. Yeah, wow. Hey, we got Jose Perez in there. Go Phillies. We'll take that as a go Birds. So thank you, Jose. But yeah,
feeling good, and the stones will continue to be turned over. Speaking of overturning some potentially questionable stones, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Aroldis Chapman, who I feel like we've talked about in the past, and every time we talk about him, I go, who's going to sign this man? Like, who is going to let this man's MLB career continue after what he did the man's history is beyond checkered, but the performance didn't match any of that history. Last season, the walk rate was absurd. He got an infected tattoo in the middle of the season, left the Yankees, reportedly gave them an ultimatum about a postseason roster spot, and when they wouldn't guarantee him one, he bolted and went to Miami. So I was of the opinion, let's just end this here. We don't need to do the Aroldis Chapman thing anymore. But somehow the Kansas City Royals have decided to give him another chance. It's a cheap deal, and if you think you're getting Aroldis Chapman upside, and you're a team like the Royals who's going to be in the trade market selling at the deadline, then sure, I guess you can justify it. But is this the last we see of Aroldis Chapman? Is this his last chance? And does he make it to the end of the year in Kansas City?
It's a really good question. And we're going to have to be in wait and see mode on how this one plays out. Ultimately, because Chapman is obviously a very talented pitcher, and getting him for $3+ million is a strong signing on paper. And he's got the upside to far exceed that. But it's that exactly what you just described with him, with the ultimatum that he gave the Yankees and the other off the field issues that he comes with. Like, there's baggage. And that it was not, how do I want to describe this? It limited the playing field for the number of suitors that were going to be in on Chapman. And despite how talented he was, like, yeah, you're going to have concerns about how he's going to end up fitting into your locker room. Let's say he answers those questions and he ends up changing that reputation that he has in Kansas City, and he pitches really well. Then he could end up being a really highly desired trade candidate. And that's when it could become interesting. But also, if he flames out and he really struggles, it's not going to take Kansas City that much, and it's not going to take him to eat that much of a deal to designate him for assignment. So I like the value play. I think for Kansas City, there's no risk in it, but it's a really high risk. It's a high reward, like low risk kind of a deal, in my opinion. I'm curious, what do you think of it, Adam?
Yeah, I think, look, if you're going to sign Aroldis Chapman, you're going to do it at a value like this. And that's why I was so concerned for the months of silence, because I was like, if no rebuilding team is going to do this, then the Yankees, even after that public battle, very well might talk themselves into $3.5 million worth of Aroldis Chapman for 1 year. I mean, you are losing him in the bullpen. You're going to have to replace him. The Yankees lost Chad Green, who still unsigned as he comes back from Tommy John, but they lost Green, Chapman, and Britton. And they signed Tommy Kahnle, and they're hopeful they're going to get Ron Marinaccio for a full season, and they didn't have him in the playoff bullpen. And that's great, but the longer Chapman's free agency lasts, the longer you look towards his previous employer, one that would be losing him if it would create a hole if they lost him. They know him better than anybody else. And in 2015-16, when he was coming off of a domestic violence suspension, they were the ones who were willing to take that chance on him. And they were also the ones who profited off a good half season of Chapman, sending him to the Cubs, getting him his World Series ring, and then bringing him back. So no team has been more intrinsically connected than the Yankees with Chapman, because not only did they take a chance on him once, they took full advantage of the fruits of his labor and then took a chance on him again. And then, so it was only really the explosion at the end of his tenure that would make you think they were willing to break the relationship once and for all. So the longer it lasted, the more I was like, I mean, how low is his value going to go? 2.5, 3? Like, Yankees have just about that much wiggle room under the Steve Cohen tax. You start to worry they might do it. Now that he's on the Royals, it's pretty clear that the goal here is do as much as you can with him up until the deadline and then flip him to 2023's version of the Chicago Cubs. And I don't know what facilities the Royals have. I don't know, what their pitching coaches are capable of, and bringing him back to reality and harnessing that fastball. But the stuff is always there. There was even a time, it feels like a million years ago, but it was early 2021 when Chapman developed the splitter, and everybody was like, uh-oh, here's the new pitch from the pitching, from the man who brought you the 105-mile-an-hour fastball. Now we have this freak splitter. That only lasted about a month before he got hurt, and the roller coaster went straight down and hasn't gone back up yet. I think mostly, I think the value is fair. It's a fair deal. I was sort of hoping the clock would run out on Chapman's career. But clearly that hope was probably for naught. Yeah.
And on that, would you say it's fair to say that Chapman quit on the Yankees?
I think it's totally fair. And I think the craziest thing is that there was a roster spot available for him if he'd waited another 36 hours, because Scott Efros had Tommy John and Marinaccio was too hurt to continue. So they would have probably used a playoff roster spot on him if he hadn't thrown a tantrum.
Yeah, and that's ultimately why I didn't think there was any chance that the Yankees would re-sign him, is giving up on the team during the playoffs. How do you explain that, bringing him back and putting him into that clubhouse to your other players in that locker room? Like, I don't think you can. So I don't think there was ever any scenario where he was going to return to New York. Yeah,
that certainly makes more sense. And you look at the fabric of that clubhouse. They did not pivot, right? They brought Anthony Rizzo back. They brought Aaron Judge back in the long term. So it's not like they decided, like, we're going to bring in a 7, 8, 9 new guys, and then maybe Aroldis Chapman fits in there. They said, we like what we have. We like the continuity. And this guy didn't. So he's gone.
Yep. No, exactly. And the one thing with the Yankees' side too is they've been really good at developing relievers and getting them out of seemingly nowhere. He's not going to contribute this year because he had Tommy John, but Scott Efros, huge fan of him. Getting him last year from the Cubs, I thought that was a really under the radar move. So when he returns next year, not this year, but next year, I think he could end up having a big impact for them. But I'm optimistic, even though the Yankees seemingly do have some holes in that bullpen. I think they're going to be able to put together a pretty solid and reliable bullpen. I don't know if this is like a legitimate concern or if this is me just overthinking it, but I also wonder, is the Yankees' offense in a spot where they can possibly regress next year? Because obviously they relied a lot on Aaron Judge, and like Judge is still going to be a really good player, but I don't know if he'll be able to put up the numbers that he did last year. I wondered if they could add another corner outfielder or something along those lines, or even another bat so they can, I don't know, so they have more options offensively and not just solely rely on Judge. I don't know, because you follow the Yankees closer than I do. Is that like a valid concern?
No, I think that's very possible. And I think all you have to do is look at Gleyber Torres, who we joked earlier about him, maybe being traded at last year's deadline for Pablo Lopez. No. Who knows how close to the finish line that was, but as soon as he remained on the Yankees roster, yeah, it felt close. It felt like he knew that it was close. And when he came back in August, he was not the same guy. And he's someone who the mental side of the game clearly affects him. The Yankees made him play shortstop for a while. He regressed offensively. Yankees put him at second base. His bat bounced back. You think you're leaving the organization, messes with your head a little bit. You realize you got to buckle down in September. He bounced back again. So I do think the offense is in a position to regress a little bit. That's why I thought trading him was so foolish, because it took these extenuating circumstances to mess with his head in the first place. Like, just have him enter. This team's not in a position where they could sacrifice offense, and to willingly sacrifice someone who is pretty good to great in April, May, June, July, September, you take that 1 month out, did not feel worth it to me. And I do think they're in a position to add. I don't know who that would be, just because Duvall fit for me. A little too rich for their blood. Jurickson Profar fits for me. At this point, a little too rich for their blood. They've got $3 million to work with. So they're going to have to trade Aaron Hicks and or Josh Donaldson and eat at least 60% of those contracts to add anybody right now, it feels like, which is a pretty frustrating spot to be in. And I don't know if you've heard anything about those guys, but I would imagine teams are not beating down the Yankees' door to acquire Josh Donaldson and Aaron Hicks at their current costs.
No, and I wouldn't think so either. And because you mentioned Profar and as a possible option, I still think a guy like David Peralta. I know the Yankees they're pretty they're pretty right-handed heavy. That's right, right? Oh yeah, they're very right-handed heavy, and I thought maybe Peralta could fit in that regard, but I don't know. I'm curious to see what they end up doing there. I think Peralta makes sense, although I think we're probably looking at like $6 or $7 million for him. So right now, I wouldn't be able to afford that. I'm very curious to see what direction they go in. If they do add another offensive bat, or if they try to trade a guy like Donaldson or Aaron Hicks. I don't know. It's going to be tough for Brian Cashman to pull either of those off, because obviously Donaldson is making a lot of money, and Hicks he's not lived up to that contract that he gave him a few years ago.
Yeah. Cashman Houdini moves incoming, maybe. Maybe somebody wants Aaron Hicks or Donaldson at the deadline when they're slightly less expensive. I guess we'll see. But yeah, incomplete roster. Not much movement left in free agency, as you mentioned earlier. People are now starting to focus on the offseason after this one. People are talking to Aaron Nola about a potential extension and what his future in Philadelphia looks like. And honestly, this headline grabbed me more than most of the rumor mill did this week. And if you're power ranking things I was interested in, it was Red Sox fans screaming at high and bloom, and then Aaron Nola talking about what his future in Philadelphia might look like. Nola said nothing has really come up, quote, about extension conversations. Philly obviously spending a lot of money these days. That's what Dave Dombrowski does. Without Aaron Nola, that team looks a lot different. Nola Wheeler is different than Wheeler, ? Ranger Suarez. I mean, you saw it last year. Do you think they're going to be able to scrounge up additional cash for Nola? And do you think it's a priority for them?
It should be a priority. Like, Aaron Nola has established himself as one of the better young pitchers in baseball. And they extended him early in his career for a reason, is because they had that belief in him as a potential frontline starter. And last year, he really showed that he can be that kind of a guy. And when he's going, there's not many pitchers who are better. If I was the Phillies, I would prioritize an Aaron Nola extension. I think that should be right at the forefront of things now that they've gotten Trey Turner done, where they've gotten Craig Kimbrell, where they've gotten Matt Strahm, where they've gotten there's another one in there I'm forgetting. Taijuan Walker. How did I forget Taijuan Walker? Obviously, they've invested quite a bit of resources in that rotation with Zach Wheeler and Walker, and they've invested in other pitchers too. But there has to be room for Aaron Nola. I don't know exactly. Like, the big question that I have is what kind of a contract you give him, because I don't know if there's a real template for that right now. So I'm fascinated to see when those discussions eventually start. Like, where does each side go? And exactly where is the common ground? That's why I am not a general manager or an agent. So thankfully for that. But I can make some phone calls and kind of see where exactly that price point can eventually be. But I have not gotten that kind of a feel quite yet.
Yeah, I'll make some calls too. You're right. It's hard to pinpoint. He's mostly, the durability is massive. He has not really missed a lot of time due to injury, and he's currently on this little tiny 5-year, $56.75 million extension. Still just 29, but will be 30 mid-summer. So not a spring chicken. And in some way, that durability hurts him a little bit, because it's like he's built up all these miles on his arm at this point, and he hasn't really gotten to take that much of a breather. So I feel like with the deals we saw last year, where you've got guys like Walker making that upper echelon money, this feels almost Wheeler contract-ish for me, but I guess we'll see what that precedent is like moving forward.
No, exactly. And one thing too is, like, obviously the Phillies, they have shown that they're not afraid to spend. And also, like, he's done one extension before. What's to say that he won't do another extension now, should that value ultimately be fair in his eyes? So I wouldn't rule anything out there. Like, when's his contract eventually up, by the way?
End of 2023. So he's only got 1 year left.
Yeah, perhaps he ends up hitting the free agent market because he sees what a lot of these guys are making right now on the free agent market, and is like, hey, it's time to get my payday. And perhaps he ends up becoming like the second version of Lance Lynn, where he's throwing like 200 plus innings every year. Who knows? But that durability obviously is in his favor for now, but, like, will he eventually break off? I think that's going to be a question that teams are going to end up having. But so far, he's proved that he's been able to be durable, which is obviously key.
Yeah, he's a beast. I think you fit well in Philadelphia long term, but we will learn after the season. So far, nothing's really come up. It might behoove the Phillies to get that done in the next couple months. I don't know. You want to get ahead of things like this. Anything else in the notebook that we have not touched upon? I know the theme of this is that the free agency market is relatively slow. Let's get back into the World Baseball Classic preview, or maybe more. I can't wait to talk action with you, but any more names you're hearing we haven't mentioned? I mean, Gary Sanchez in the comments. I'm curious about him too. That's one where I just have no idea. I'm seeing a Giants buzz, but I can't make heads or tails Gary Sanchez.
Yeah, with the Giants, like they're not in a position where they're going to be able to add another catcher to the 40-man roster, so that could be tough unless it's on like an NRI contract. But Sanchez's market, from my understanding, has started to move a little bit, but it's going pretty slowly at the same time, but progressing in some ways. I know there's been a bunch of different buzz publicly. Like I know Nick M is saying that he saw that the Angels have interest. Like I saw the Rockies mentioned the other day. There's going to be an abundance of teams that show interest there. Like he's a talented guy. So like certainly he's going to sign somewhere, but maybe it's soon. His market has moved, but I just don't think anything's close as of right now. As I said, as of last check, Yuli Gurriel and the Marlins was not close. That was as of yesterday, so I don't know if anything's changed today. Let's see. Michael Wacha is by far the best free agent on the market, in my opinion. And him being unsigned, I wonder if it's because he's asking for too much or if just the interest isn't there. That could end up being a really nice bargain play by some team. When he eventually does sign, I still think he makes all the sense in the world for the Angels. Like that is something that I think they absolutely should do. Maybe on a 1-year contract. Who knows? But yeah, it's been moving pretty slowly lately on the market. I think that much I can say for sure. Another one is David Peralta. I think is a really intriguing guy. Like I think 3 teams that make a whole lot of sense for him. Mentioned one earlier, the Yankees. Yeah. I think that's a really good fit there. I think the Texas Rangers. I think that's like, let's say for a 1-year, $6 million contract. I think that makes total sense. Then the other one is the Dodgers. Dodgers tried to trade for Peralta last year. I don't know if that's public or not, but they had interest in him last year at the trade deadline. Didn't get it done. He ended up going to Tampa. I wonder if they could end up being it again because I think outfield is currently their number 1 priority. So I think those are 3 teams to watch there.
Beautiful. And we will catch back up on Thursday. Hopefully the market will have moved ever so slightly by then, just a little bit. If we could just inch that market along, just to, just put that carrot in front of the market, get it to bite. It'd be nice. The one thing I do know will be different when we get on Thursday. 2 things I know. One, I will not be wearing an Eagles pullover. I will not be doing it again. I mean, maybe I'll do it after Sunday, but I'm not going to do it in Thursday's episode. I could do it Monday. We just don't know. Go Eagles, beat Brock Purdy, et cetera, drink your faces off. Wawa, go Birds. So I know that I will be wearing a different outfit on Thursday, but I also know we're going to be having a change in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Hopefully we are announcing Hall of Famers tomorrow night, Tuesday, live on MLB Network. I hesitate to even totally ask because it doesn't feel guaranteed that we're going to get any names in addition to Fred McGriff already announced. If you follow the ballot tracking, I'm an insane person. I obviously do that. It looks like Scott Rowland and Todd Helton are like roughly equal right now. Helton has flipped more and Rowland is also over the 75% threshold, but neither is very securely over it. And you'll find someone predicting Helton, no Rowland, and someone saying Rowland, no Helton, and a lot of people saying neither of them. So where are you at here? Do you view I think, who do you think anyone's getting in? And do you view Rowland and Helton as Hall of Famers? Like this ballot is full of a bunch of names who are sort of right on that borderline of being considered. And some people are enthusiastic supporters of one and not the others. And we can't seem to come to a consensus. So do you think there are Hall of Famers on this ballot? And do you think we're going to get some new names tomorrow?
I think we should see Rowland and Todd Helton. I think we should see both of those guys in there. I was a huge Scott Rowland fan growing up, like being able to watch him in the infield there. I thought he was obviously great. And obviously a huge part of those Cardinals and Cardinals teams there. And Todd Helton at first base, watching him with the Rockies, like, yeah, I think he should be in. I also think another guy should be in is Carlos Beltran. Mm-hmm. I was a huge Carlos Beltran fan growing up too. I thought he had one of the prettiest swings in baseball, both right and left-handed. And I know that Astros cheating scandal is impacting his candidacy, or at least I would imagine it is.
Yeah.
'Cause I think without that, he's in. Billy Wagner is another guy that I think should be in as well. I know there's plenty of people in baseball who have been long lauding his candidacy as a Hall of Famer and hoping that he eventually gets in. I don't know what his voting is right now. I have not looked at Mr. Tibbs, who does a tremendous job tracking all this stuff.
He's
Yeah.
crazy.
Wow. And Sean Daly with the note in our comment section, by the way, that Todd Helton started over Peyton Manning at Tennessee briefly. That's notes you can only get at the Baseball Insiders. So, but
he's an athlete. He's a QB. I think as a devoted follower of Mr. Tibbs, I think Wagner's going to miss this year, but he has flipped an absurd number of votes. He's like the biggest gainer, and he's got years left on the ballot. So I think he does get in next year or the year after at the very worst. I think Roland and Helton both have a solid chance this year. I think Carlos Beltran is getting penalized, like you said, for the cheating scandal. I think he's a clear Hall of Fame talent. I don't even really know why I know why we're having the debate, but then you also get some people pretending that it's about more than the cheating scandal, and you just kind of want to shake them and be like, no, it's not, right? Like, he's a Hall of Fame player, and you're just penalizing him.
Oh, he absolutely is a Hall of Fame player. If I was voting this year, I would vote for Carlos Beltran.
I would too. And I've had to think about it, but I would as well. And I think also Helton is a pretty obvious Hall of Famer if you take out the Colorado factor. And if you take out the Colorado factor, you're basically saying that if you're on one of the teams in Major League Baseball, you're not allowed to be in the Hall of Fame. Like, MLB put the Rockies in Denver, right? So they deserve the same treatment as the other teams. If somebody's numbers are absurdly inflated by Colorado, then of course count him out. But Todd Helton he didn't ask to play for the Colorado Rockies. He's placed on that franchise, and he hit 360 during, matched up with Larry Walker. He and Larry Walker, very similar guys. Walker in, I put Helton into.
See, I think you said that exactly best, and I'm absolutely team Todd Helton being in the Hall of Fame. I think we're actually aligned on that, which that did not happen much with Carm. So shout out to Mr. Adam Weinrib. So
makes for agreeable television, though. Sorry that we disagree, that we don't disagree. But I also think it's good. I think it's ultimately good that we don't disagree.
I disagree.
I'm vehemently. Well, we do not like the same football team. That is true. That is
true. Hey, we did beat you 38-7. So
yeah.
All right, I had to get one dig in there. I'm sorry.
38-7. What is that? Aaron Nola's low ball extension if he signed with the Atlanta Braves? What?
That might be exceeding what the Braves would give him. Yeah.
7 years, 21, and a $20 million donation to the Braves Foundation.
I love how every one of their extensions has that, like right at the note of their press, or right at the bottom of their press releases. Yeah,
it's funny because you want to talk opposing fans down from the conspiracies, and like Met fans are like, "What the hell is this Braves Foundation?" And you want to be like, "Calm down, it's okay, it's all good, it's all good." But at the same time, what is this Braves Foundation?
I don't know. I've been wondering too. It's a real thing. That much I know, but. It's it's pretty funny because I remember when I ended up breaking the Michael Harris extension that people were talking about Alex Anthopoulos, like, and him being mad or like whatever, and like the different like things that are said about Anthopoulos by fans, I think are hilarious. I don't know. I don't know. The guy runs a really good operation in Atlanta. I give him a whole lot of credit because like. If other teams could follow that model, I absolutely think they would. It's just really hard to replicate, and he does such a good job. He's so persistent at it. There's a reason why he's one of the best, and I still cannot believe Toronto let him go. That is mind-blowing to me. Obviously he made that Jose Reyes trade. Well, that was Anthopoulos, wasn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I think so, but like obviously that didn't work out, but boy, he's a really good executive in what he's done in Atlanta. Probably the best work of the entire year in 2022, in my opinion.
Yeah, other teams would, if they could get the secret sauce, they'd use it. There would be a Toronto Blue Jays Foundation. Alas, it only works in the ATL. That is it for this edition of the Baseball Insiders, live on YouTube, on all the podcast platforms as well. If you missed the live feed, come grab the audio. Please subscribe to the channel if you're here. If you liked it, drop us a subscribe, tell your friends, tweet it out, because we are going to be here live Mondays and Thursdays, 3:30 Eastern, all off season long. ready for that regular season, though, ready for spring training. I'm sick of saying we're going to be here all off season long. I want to be here all season long with you, Robert Murray. And thanks again for bringing your talents to this episode and every episode.
Wow. Hey, thank you for bringing your talents here too. You're the man as always. I appreciate you. As I said before, the Eagles polo or the Eagles shirt is a very good look on you. So you should wear that more often. But thank you everybody for tuning in. Puts food on our tables, which is always appreciated because Lord knows how much food I eat. So it's, as I said before, it's very appreciated.
We appreciate you all. I appreciate you, Robert. And I see Ghost in the comments. Talk Ha-Seong Kim next episode. Perfect. Plug the audio feed. We did. We talked Kim, and we talked it on the, if you want to watch it again on YouTube, playback will be available as soon as we hop off, or check the audio feed because there are Kim nuggets in there. Until next time, please keep chiming into the comments. Please let us know what you want to hear. Please let us know how you want me to use Robert's insight, where you want me to direct him. Is Todd Helton a Hall of Famer? Sound off in the comments. Sound off in the reviews. And we'll know for sure for at least this year, tomorrow evening. Tune in for the results. Until next time, I'm Adam Weinrib, Robert Murray. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining. Thanks, Robert, as always.
Thank you, everybody. Go Birds, and we'll see you on Thursday.